Okay, again, we will talk about naming inorganic compounds. So we will focus only to inorganic compounds, those compounds without carbons in their chemical formula. The naming for the organic compounds is actually way different, and I hope we can really discuss that one sa finals. Kasi medyo nabibitin ako sa time, especially if walang klase, may holiday. That's my problem actually. So last time, we were not able to really finish all the organic compounds because of limited time. But nevertheless, let's continue discussing naming of our inorganic compounds. So for the learning outcomes of this lesson, we will be discussing the set of rules in naming the inorganic compounds, and we will just briefly describe and explore the organic world, the organic chemistry. So we have here the following lessons: ionic compounds, molecular compounds, the acids and bases, and lastly, we'll have the organic compounds. I'll just start discussing this today, and then we will continue tomorrow. But before tayo mag-continue tomorrow sa ating discussion with this, I think I'll be giving you quiz for the activity number 4. So you also have to prepare for the quiz. Okay? So let's start. So to begin our discussion about the naming of our inorganic compounds, let's first go back to the difference of the two, organic compounds and inorganic compounds. Class, when you say organic compounds, that will be under the organic chemistry, and that please always remember that when you say organic compounds, we will be talking about carbon-containing compounds. They have carbons in their structure, and that these carbons are bonded with other elements, example, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen, and sulfur. But again, the common sa ilahang tanan kay si carbon. And all the other elements or all the other compounds that do not contain carbon belongs to inorganic compounds. But we have exceptions, class. Again, we have exceptions because we have carbon-containing compounds that are considered inorganic. So their naming, their chemical formula follow the rules of the inorganic chemistry. So mo na nga inorganic compounds sila. Unsa tong mga carbon-containing compounds nato nga inorganic, we have the carbon monoxide, the carbon dioxide, carbon disulfide, and those compounds containing the cyanide group. So the polyatomic ion called cyanide contains carbon in its formula, and all the other compounds that contain cyanide belongs to inorganic. And also compounds containing carbonate and bicarbonate. Because polyatomic ions to sila na merong carbon, pero the carbon here is not counted as organic. Instead, inorganic sila. So please be familiar with the different compounds that contain carbon pero under sila sa study sa inorganic chemistry. Now, we have 4 categories of our inorganic compounds. Inorganic walang carbon. Now, how do we classify these compounds? They're classified as either ionic compounds or molecular compounds, or we can also classify them as acids and bases. And lastly, we have here the hydrates. Let's start with ionic compounds. Pag sinabing ionic compounds, these are combination of cations and anions. Again, combination of cations and anions. Meaning if we look at their formula, you can see there that there is the presence of a positively charged element and another negatively charged element. Or kung hindi element, syempre polyatomic ions. Again, we have polyatomic ions class like our ammonium ion combination of nitrogen and hydrogen but with a positive charge. So ang inyong tandaan, most of our positively charged elements are actually metals. And that's when you say ionic compounds, ang component niya, let me write sa screen. Pag sinabing ionic compounds, always yan siya may cation or positively charged element combined with an anion or the negatively charged element. Now, most of our cations are actually metals and most of our anions are non-metals. So sa laboratory class, ito yung sinasabi ko sa inyo na metals plus non-metals. Now, these non-metals can also be polyatomic ions. Basta negatively charged. Itong metals din, instead of the metal, we have the exception, the ammonium, because ammonium is a polyatomic ion pero positively charged, pero hindi siya metals. Okay? So again, pag ionic compound, we have here cation and anion, mostly metal plus non-metal. So we have here the elements like sodium. If wala yun siyang charge, we call it sodium element. But if it becomes sodium positive, we call it now sodium ion, or to be exact, we call it sodium cation because it's positively charged. So remember, when you say element, most likely it is neutral, wala siyang charge. Pero pag mayroon na siyang charge class, we call that now ions. So nakadepende na lang kung positive or negative. So those are our ionic compounds. Now, under our ionic compounds, meron tayong tinatawag na binary compounds. So pag sinabing binary, binary means dalawa. It means this is just a compound formed from just two elements. Wala pa dito, hindi pa natin i-discuss si polyatomic ions dito. Kasi pag sinabing binary compounds, dalawang element lang talaga yan. Just like NaCl. Dalawang elements lang ang nandito, sodium and chloride. So kapag ganito class, binary compound. Like KF, potassium fluoride. Dalawang elements lang din. So potassium fluoride again is an example of a binary compound. Dalawang elements. And most of the time, these two elements are metal cation and then the other one is a non-metal anion. Yan mostly class ang combination pag sinabing binary compounds. Questions so far about this? This is still under the ionic compounds. Kasi 'di ba ang ato ang mga inorganic compounds atuan na siyang gi-categorize first sa ionic compounds. Thus under sa ionic compounds, we have the first one, the binary compounds. Pag binary, dalawang elements. So in naming class, so again in naming, the metal is just named kung unsa man na siya nga metal. So parehas sa sodium, it is still called sodium, but the anion, the second element, the non-metal, will have the ending na IDE. So I believe you are very familiar with that. Na pag mag-name tayo, as is tayo with the metal, let's go back to the basic example, as is tayo with the sodium, but the non-metal, which is the chloride, negatively charged, instead of writing chlorine, we will change its ending to IDE. Thus, the correct name for NaCl is sodium chloride. Now, in the screen class, you will see there our anions or our non-metals so that you can have a reference and you will be familiar with our different non-metals in the periodic table. So the non-metal starts with group 4A. we have there first the carbon. Thus, if we use carbon as the second element, it will end with IDE. It will be called carbide. Silicon after the carbon will become silicide. And then after sa group 4A, we only have 2 there. We have group 5A starting with nitrogen. So mag-i-end yan siya sa IDE. It will be called nitride. The same thing with phosphorus, phosphide. And then group 6A, we have the oxide, sulfide, selenide, and telluride. So all of them has negative 2 na charge. Fluoride also, for the group 7A, we call them the halogens. They are all non-metals and thus they are anions. They are negatively charged. So we have fluoride, chloride, bromide, and iodide. All of them have negative 1 na charge. Na pag meron tayong asterisk dito. The word carbide is also used for the anion C2 to negative. So either we use one element here but the charge is negative 4, or you can use 2 elements but each of them has negative 2 na charge. So parehas lang yan siya. This one is called carbide, this is still called carbide. Nasundan pa? Tell me if wala na nasundan ako mga ginapang-discuss din he. Okay? So again, rules for naming our ions. The names of our metals do not change. So yung mga hindi nakasali dito, class, are considered metals. Itong nasa screen ninyo sa table 2.2, ito yung mga non-metals natin. And ito yung chini-change ang ending ng name. The root of the element name, tapos it will end with IDE. That's the name of our anions or our non-metals. Like chlorine. It is supposedly called chlorine, but if it becomes an anion, mahimo siya negatively charged, it will be called chloride ion. So chlor is the root of the element name chlorine, and then the ending will be IDE. Now that is the same thing with nitrogen. Instead of nitrogen, it will be called nitride. So again, these are the rules for naming our ions. So we have other examples here. We are done with sodium chloride. Let's move on to KBr. So K, what is our rule? As is tayo with the metal. So let's write potassium, and Br is bromine. But if we write the final name of KBr, the bromine there should have an ending na IDE. So the correct name is potassium bromide. That is also true for ZnI2. Kahit na class may subscript ka dyan, if it is an ionic compound, meaning it's between a metal and a non-metal, we don't include in the name the subscript. So just write the name of the metal zinc and the name of the non-metal iodine, but you have to replace that one with IDE. So the correct name for this ZnI2 is zinc iodide. Therefore, before ka mag-start og naming yun class, identify the components of the compound. Kung metal ba sila o non-metal. Okay, kung metal o non-metal, please follow this rule. Okay? Follow the rules. Whether parehas ani, Al2O3, naatay mga subscript 2 and 3. 2 for aluminum, 3 for oxygen. But in naming, we don't use the prefixes because this is a combination of metal and non-metal. So just write the name of the first element, aluminum, and then the second element will end with IDE. Thus, Al2O3 is correctly called as aluminum oxide. So I hope nasabta na siya. Paano i-name ato ang ionic compounds? Now let's move on sa ato ang ternary compounds. So nagihapon ta class under sa ionic compounds ha, ionic compounds. Naatay duha ka klaseng ionic compounds. Number 1, the binary Katong duha lang jud ka elements. Tapos number 2, the ternary. So from the name itself, ternary, we have 3 elements here, which means this is a combination of an element plus a polyatomic ion. Again, this is now the combination. Mostly this element class is a metal. So this is again a combination of a metal plus a polyatomic ion. Now that is again called a ternary compound. So the "ide" ending is also used for certain ion. We have certain ions that end with IDE like the cyanide and the hydroxide, pero hindi yan siya sa lahat ng polyatomic ions. So parehas ani, LiOH, the ano here, the rule is just name again the metal and write the name of the polyatomic ion. So OH is called hydroxide, while this one KCN, that's potassium, and CN is called cyanide. So all in all, we have 3 elements here, 1, 2, and 3. That is why this is called a ternary compound. Pangutana mo ha, ug namoy dili masabtan sa akong mga ginaingon diri kay murag lami ra ba kayo itulog ang time nato sa chemistry. Are you still here? O basig naniud to paghihapon mo dira?
Yes po, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I asked you to make an index card for all the polyatomic ions that we have. And these are examples class, pero halo kasi ito. This is cations and anions. So yung mga cations, most of them syempre are positively charged and most of them are metals, I mean. So that is why you can see there aluminum except for ammonium. Ammonium is a polyatomic ion. It's not a metal, but it is our, I think, only polyatomic ion that is positively charged. Okay, the rest are metals na. But remember that we have metals na tigdadalawa yung charges. Yun pa yung kailangan yung tandaan, like the chromium, the cobalt. You can see on the screen kung sa ilahang possible na charges. Copper, we have the copper here, the iron. The lead can be positive 2 and positive 4. Manganese also, and the mercury, ano sila, and the tin also. So na ang mga duha ang charges. Now looking at the anion, it can be a single element like bromide, but it can also be a polyatomic ion like carbonate. So again, please, I hope you already have your index cards ngayon to help you in the naming. So in our quizzes like tomorrow and the exam next week, you are allowed to use the index cards. If I am not the proctor, I'll be informing the proctor that you will be allowed to use both your periodic tables and your index cards para hindi nila kayo sitahin. Especially na you are all required to turn on your camera sa exam. So ano yun na siya class, kanang requirement yun na siya sa exam nga you will be asked to turn on your camera so that the proctor can monitor you. Okay? Oh yes, okay lang, Mariam. If you have printed your, what do you call that? Polyatomic ions, okay lang din. So the rest, you can use an index card. Sige. Now let's talk about our transition metals. These are our metals that are found in the center of the periodic table. Now they can form more than one type of cation, meaning we have transition metals na merong dalawang charges. So sa common name nila class na nabigay ko na ito sa inyo, i-supplement lang natin para hindi niyo talaga makalimutan. Example, si iron, we can write the name iron 2 kung positive 2 siya and iron 3 if positive 3. Now this is called the systematic naming, and that is what I am requiring you to do. Systematic naming. We are following the rules set by IUPAC or the International Union of Pure and Applied Chemistry. Pero pag sinabi kong give the common name, that's the time we use the ending OUS and IC. So when are we going to use the ending? Pag common name siya. OUS refers to the lower charge, while the IC ending is used for the higher one. So pag sinabing iron 2, syempre among the two class, siya yung lower. And siya yung tinatawag natin na ferrous. Okay? Ferrous ion. Pag sinabing ferrous sulfate, the one that is being marketed as iron supplement, that is an ion with a charge of positive 2. But if we are talking about the higher charge, the iron 3, that is commonly called as ferric. So do not forget how we don't call them ionic and ionos, it's ferrous and ferric. But we'll just use these names if I'm going to ask you to write the common name, not the systematic name. Okay? So other pa, I have listed here the elements that can form two charges so that you will be guided. Though I have given this sa inyo, pero para lang mag-guide talaga kayo, like chromium. Chromium can be positive 2 and positive 3. So the systematic name is chromium 2 and chromium 3. But if you are asked to give the common name, that's the time you use the one that ends with OUS or IC. So we call them chromous and chromic. That is also true for copper, cuprous, and cupric. Pero copper is just positive 1 and positive 2. Si iron is positive 2 and positive 3. So I have given that sa inyo kanina. Si mercury class, this is Hg2 positive 2. This is actually the mercury 1. Mercury 1 yan siya. This is the positive 1. Kasi bakit siya positive 1? Mercury kasi is mostly pag positive 1 siya, nasali siya doon sa diatomic na molecule. So mostly may 2 yan siya sa baba dyan. And kung positive 1 siya, tapos dalawa sila, kaya positive 2 ang charge niya dito. Pero if you can see this type of element like mercury sa mga quizzes or sa exam, that is actually the mercury 1. Okay? And the correct mercury 2 is this one. Wala siyang subscript. So positive 2 talaga yung charge niya. Let me correct this. This is this one, mercury 2. Again, this is mercury 2 here. And then also we have the tin. Stannous and the stannic. Okay? So meron pa akong binigay sa inyo, the gold, the aurum and the auric. So please follow that. And the lead, the plumbous and the plumbic. So I hope naminaw mo tong nag-lesson ta ato and nag-take notes sad mo. Questions about our ionic compounds? Sa pag-name sa kanila. Napa ba mo'y wala na sabtan dito kung paano sila i-name? Or naglisod gihapon mo hangtod karon? Yes, Mariam, are you raising your hand?
Opo. Ma'am, yung sa mercury po, ay sa mercury 1, nandyan pa rin po yung subscript na 2.
Yeah, I'll give you an example just like this one. If you are going to name this one Hg2Cl2 and HgCl2. Ayan. Ipa-name yan sa inyo, Hg2Cl2 and the HgCl2. Kasi mostly diri man gud na siya maglibog sa mercury kay lahi man gud ang format ni mercury, no. Now unsa gani ang himuon ani, we will have to do the reverse crisscross. Reverse the reverse. Ibalik natin yung mga charges nila instead sa subscript here. So anong ibig sabihin nito? We have Hg and Cl, the same thing with this one. Ayan. So kung this one class, the 2 here, ibalik natin siya dito. Again, ibalik natin siya here. Tapos, itong 2 dito, always remember class, nga dili nato na siya mabalik kay chlorine. Kay chlorine is always -1. So again, this now class is not representing the charge, but this is representing the number of atoms. So how will you know that? Kaya pag ibalik na to si example, this is 2 here for Hg, and then we'll give it to chlorine. This is already wrong. Kaya kung tanawon ninyo sa sa inyong periodic table, di ba chlorine is in group 7A and all of the elements sa group 7A is -1. So mali na siya diretso. So meaning kanang 2 dinha magstay na siya as is dinha. It's not for the charge but it is referring to the number of atoms. Meaning na daw ka dinhay duha ka atoms ni mercury. So mao ni siya karon ang ilahang charges nga tinuod. Chlorine will still be -1. So ayaw ihatag sa iya si 2 kay mamali na siya. Now paano nato siya i-name? I-name nato siya syempre as mercury. Tapos take note, ang charge niya +2 pero duha man iyahang atom. Meaning 2 divided by 2 that is +1. So mo ni siya ang ginatawag og mercury 1 and then Cl is chlorine pero mag-end siya sa IDE. So this is named as mercury 1 chloride. Now, let's see the other one, the other compound. The other compound is HgCl2. We can actually kaning 2 dinhi, pwede na to ibalik dito. Ibalik na to siya dinhi, +2. Kani wala siya i-subscript. So automatic this is -1. Okay, -1 na siya. Na pag i-name nato siya, this is now mercury. And sa iyahang charge, +2 na wala man siya i-subscript din ha. So dili nato ma-divide. Which means, maugyud ni class ang mercury 2 chloride. Okay? So that's the difference now of the mercurous and the mercury ion. Kasi most of the time they use the for mercury 1, they use this formula and symbol. Una mostly ang ilahang ginagamit. Kasi si mercury 1 is mostly naka-diatomic molecule. Duha ka buok nga atom siya permi mo na nga mahimog +2 iyahang charge. Questions pa? Gaan pa tamo og example ha sa mercury. Example this one. What do you think is the mercury 1 and asa sa ilaha ang mercury 2? Sige daw, i-analyze ninyo. Like we name them. Huwag kayo sa ako. Anyone? How will you name the HGO? Mercury 1 is the second, according kay Johanna. Let's see. So, unsa gani itong buhaton, reverse the crisscross. So, this one, how about this one? HG and O. Wala kang makita na subscript dyan. So, we cannot do the reverse. However, class, if you look at the periodic table, oxygen is always -2. Wala ka mang makita na subscript dyan and -2 si oxygen, this means na si mercury is +2. So this is equal to 0. Kaya walang nangyari na crisscross. Kaya HGO lang talaga siya. Therefore, if you name this, this is now mercury And what is the charge of mercury? Positive 2. So this is class the mercury 2, and then we'll name the oxygen as oxide. That's how you name this. Now, pagdating sa second, Hg2O2. Hg2O2, we have here Hg and O. May 2 dito si oxygen. Ibalik natin kay mercury. Now, this one is negative 2 automatically here. Pwede mo siyang ibalik, pero pag ibalik mo kasi siya, maging 4 na siya dyan. Negative 2 pa rin ito, class. Again, negative 2 pa rin ito siya dito. And then as is si 2 dito. Number of atoms pa rin siya. Hindi siya nagre-refer sa charge ni oxygen. Kasi kahit anong mangyari, class, ang charge ni oxygen will still be negative 2. Pero nabalik natin yung ano natin, what you call that, subscript. Kasi pag ganito ha, para dili mo maglibog, kasi maglibog mo mula, lagi naman nagibalik ang 2 kay oxygen. So ang 2 din gibalik na ko kay mercury. Pero ani man good kung ang 2 din ibutang nato kay oxygen. You remember originally duha siya ka atom, mahimo ni siya og negative 4 all in all, class. Kay originally duha man siya ka buok. So dili nato pwede ibalik og ihatag kay oxygen si 2 din mag as is lang na siya dinha, kay that will be referring to the number of atoms. So this is 2 divided by 2, positive 1 gud na siya. So this is the correct mercury 1 and then oxide. Okay? Mercury 1, oxide na siya. Pero usahay si mercury oxide, they will just automatically write Hg2O para dili maglibog. Unang yun na siya ang problema kay mercury, kay usahay isulat siya Hg2 positive 2, nga duha siya ka atom, or usahay pud isulat siya Hg positive 1. Isa lang siya ka atom pero automatic 1 na siya. So mo na nga usahay pag isulat nila ang chemical formula ni mercury 1 oxide, this is Hg positive 1, oxygen is always negative 2, mag-criss-cross ta, usahay pag mercury oxide, mo ni ilahang ginasulat, Hg2O. Pero parehas lang na sila sa Hg2O2 nga mercury oxide. So that's how you know, mag-reverse ta sa ato ang charges. Okay? Questions about mercury pa? Or any other things that you would like to clarify? Si mercury lang ang may ingana ha, the rest wala na. Wala na. Makahilak ang mga namings. Sige, napatay time. Yan, napatay time. Isa-isahon daw ta mo diribe. Ikan sa letter A kung nasundan yun ba. Either I will give you the chemical formula and then you give me the name. Isa-isa ta ha para namoy recitation tanan. So number 1. Number 1. Mag-start ta kay Adrian. Adrian, are you around?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, can you give me the name of this one? You can please ready your index card o inyuhang it's na predictable din ha para diretso ta.
Chemical name lang, ma'am, no?
Oh, chemical name. Give me the chemical name of this one.
Magnesium bromide po.
Okay, very good. This is called, syempre, magnesium. Magnesium. Tapos, kay magnesium is a metal man. So, dito magamit og prefix din. Yeah, Br is bromine. Pero kailangan na to i-change yang ending og IDE. So regardless bisag na siya subscript na to dinhi. Kay dili na to na siya i-appeal kung it is between metal and non-metal. Parehas lang na Jeff. Gisend nga question. Angel. Angel Arlos. Okay, so you give me the name of this compound.
Wait lang. Calcium, wait lang po. Calcium hydroxide.
Okay, very good. This is called calcium hydroxide. So calcium is a metal and then OH is a polyatomic ion called hydroxide. So bisan pag na siya subscript din nga to, dili na to gamitan og prefix kay metal man ni class. Pag naagani metal sa ato ang chemical formula, automatic yun na siya nga dili na ka pwede mo gamit sa prefixes. Okay? So number 3, Jeff Carriedo. Let me think first. Dahil lang ha. Kaya nag-iisip ko. Okay? Jeffrey Carriedo.
Hello, ma'am.
Sige,
Marinig-
go. Go.
Gold fluoride.
Sige, let's have gold, tapos fluoride. Is this correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am. Tama po.
Yes, Mariam.
Gold 1 fluoride po.
Okay. So kulang imuhang answer, Jeff. Nganong kulang man siya? Kaya di ba si AU is an element nga pwede duha iyahang charge. Pwede siya positive 1, pwede po siya positive 3. Now, how will we know kung positive 1 or positive 3 siya? Let's see their charges. Wala tayong subscript dito, so we cannot reverse the crisscross. But we will always refer to the charge of the fluorine. So, di ba si fluorine belongs to group 7A, automatic negative 1 na iyahang charge. Now, wala man sila nag-crisscross, meaning ana, 0 ni siya equal to 0. And that means positive 1 si gold para mahimo siya equal to 0. So, to complete class, ang correct answer gyud ani kay gold 1 fluoride. Nasabtan? Nasabtan yun sa wala kasabot pa. Or nasabtan na tanan. Sige. So let's have another one. So number 4, Cheska. Cheska, are you here? Malay. Kung dili ka maka-on og mic, pwede ra ka mo answer sa chat. Wala si Cheska? Wala no? Wala din siya nitubag. Okay. How do I pronounce your name? Dina, Dina. Kalimut ko. Dina. Okay, sige, Dina. Write the I mean give me the name of this chemical. Wait lang, nag-isip ko. Okay, Dina.
Aluminum sulfide po.
Okay, very good. This is called aluminum sulfide. So kahit na class may mga subscript dyan, but take note, pag i-check ninyo, aluminum is a metal. So pag metal class automatic, we will not use the prefixes. Dili na ta mo gamit og die og try. Matik na siya nga name lang yun atong ibutang. Like Al is called aluminum. Bisan pag na siya subscript. And then S is sulfur, but since this is the second element, kailangan mag-end siya sa ide. So this is correct. Aluminum sulfide. Okay? Sige. Kasi sunod diri. Wala si Cheska, no? Jendi. Naka? Okay, sige. Sige, how about this? Mg3PO42. How do you name this? Magnesium phosphate. Ano na question mark? Di ka sure? Dili ka sure? Class, if dili mo sure, unahan ninyo tanaw sa periodic table ng magnesium. Metal ba siya or non-metal?
Metal.
Metal. So pag metal, di ba, we don't use the prefixes. So isulat lang nimo siya diretso. Iyang pangalan, magnesium. Now, PO4, matic plus nga polyatomic ion na siya. So you can refer to your list sa polyatomic ion kung unsay pangalan ni PO4. Bisan pag naa na siya ito nga subscript din PO4 lang ang pangita kasi this two is coming from magnesium man good. So meaning nga na duha ka molecules ni PO4. Pero unsay pangalan ni PO4? It's phosphate. So this is called magnesium phosphate. So tama man imuhang answer. Diyan din ganun ngay huhu. Magnesium phosphate. Again, we don't use the prefixes class kapag ka naanak kay presence ni metal. So we don't care about the subscripts there. Pag naay metal. Dito ta mo gamit og prefixes pag wala kay metal nga makuha dinha sa imuhang chemical formula. Si ammonia. Okay, sige. Okay, ikaw na sunod, Henry. Number 6. Ito na to itong time. Wait lang ha, let me think first. How about this, Henry? Ano si Henry? Wala?
Nag-busy ata siya, ma'am.
Sige, ano na lang, Gemwell na lang sa, Gemwell, are you here?
Sodium nitrate po, ma'am.
Okay, very good. This is called, wala ka? Bakit ito nag-chat? Wala, wag. Ipasunod ko na based diri sa participants sa Zoom. Later I'll call you. So this is correct. Na, class sodium is always a metal. So we don't need the prefixes. Sodium na siya diretso. And then NO3. So ternary compound din siya kay tatlo ka buok nga element. And then look at your index card. NO3 is called nitrate. So this is called sodium nitrate. Sige, Johanna. Johanna na sunod. I'll give you a polyatomic ion. Wait lang. Sige daw. Johanna?
Pause ako sa akong kodigo, ma'am.
Okay, go. You're allowed to do so.
Ang NH4, ma'am, is ammonium tapos chloride.
Okay, very good. We call this ammonium chloride. So very good. I did not use a metal class here. So ang ako ang gigamit kay cation, positively charged gihapon pero polyatomic ion. So pwede pud na siya nga na. And i-name lang nato siya as is. Kung unsay pangalan anang NH4, mao lang pud imong ibutang sa pangalan, ammonium. Tapos the next element is Cl, so chlorine, pero i-change pud nato iyahang ending sa IDE. So ammonium chloride. Very good. So number 8. Henry, naanak ka?
Yes, ma'am.
Na-disconnect ka kagaina, so I'll give you another one. Let's have the okay. Pwede ninyo siya tanawon sa inyong list. Pwede po ba mag-answer din ha sa inyo ha? Just to so that you can assess whether nakuha na ninyo ato ang rules sa naming.
Ma'am, lithium sulfate.
Okay, very good. We call this lithium sulfate. So as you can see in the periodic table, lithium is a metal. So we don't use the prefixes bisan pag naa na siya ito nga subscript din ha. Again, wata nagagamit og prefix pag metal. So lithium automatically, lithium, and then SO4 is a polyatomic ion called sulfate. Okay? Questions so far? Asa pa diri ang wala gihapon? Yes, Lindsay? Wala.
Ay, wala na, ma'am.
Okay, nasabtan na ni?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Kasi sunod. Kaya kinari ko nag-stop kay Henry. Humana ka, Johanna, no? JM, are you there?
OMG, JM.
Ma'am, wala po si Jeff.
Wala ka dira, JM. Sige, tagaan ta ka. Oh. Mag-isip ka.
Sige, baya siyang ampo, ma'am, na maka-answer daw siya.
Maka-answer ka, uy.
Ma'am, yung pinaka-hard kay JM, ma'am.
Maka-answer ka. Wait lang. Kaya nag-isip ko.
Ma'am, wala ba yan ko nag-ampo, ma'am?
Pinaka-complicated po, ma'am.
Wait. Let me delete this. JM, take your time. We can wait.
Iron nitrate. Iron nitrate po.
So answer, iron.
Nitrate po.
Nitrate.
Nitrate.
Nitrate?
Ay, nitrite pala.
Nitrite. Okay. Is this the final answer? Look at the writing sa screen. Final na o may kulang pa?
May kulang po.
May kulang. Say kulang.
Yung sa iron po, ma'am. It should
Okay.
be iron 3.
Sige. So do not forget na iron is one of the metals nga duha iyahang charge. Pwede siya positive 2 or pwede siya positive 3. So we don't just call this as iron nitrite. Tama ni siya, iron nitrite. Naalay, kulang. So unsa ang kulang?
Ma'am, di ba 2 man?
Unsay 2?
Iron 2.
Iron 2 or iron 3? Let's see.
2 ma'am, kay nitrite man.
Sige, let us see.
3 man ang nitrate.
Sige. Wait lang. NO2. So, subscript. Ang kanang NO2, that is automatically called nitrite. Polyatomic ion na siya ha. Pag NO2, nitrite. Pero pag NO3, mo na siya itong ginatawag og nitrate. Pero parehas lang na sila class nga negative 1. So, NO3 is negative 1 and NO2 is still negative 1. Tapos class, di ba, para mabala na to kung 2 or 3 ang ion, mag-reverse ta. Let's do the reverse. Let's bring this back dito sa taas. And this one, dito po sa taas. So kung ibalik na to si 3, this is positive 3 here. Tama? And then kani, do wala na siya subscript. Di ba 1 na siya diretso dire kung wala siya subscript? So this is negative 1. So kung nagibutang ng positive 3, always good na siya class nga si metal positive, ang ato ang second nga element or polyatomic ion kay negative. So as you can see, iron is positive 3. So pag isulat nato class ang iyahang name, this is correct pero to make it more correct, butangan nato siya og 3 dinhi. So this is now the final answer. Iron 3 nitrite. Asa ka dapit na libog JM? Kung positive 2 or positive 3 siya?
Bakit daw 3, ma'am? Ay, bakit daw 3, ma'am? Ginapaglaban ka na to.
Kasi di ka ng 2.
Ma'am, dili ma'am, oy, nakasabot na ko ma'am nga no, kay ano man back, reverse ano siya cross.
Reverse cross. Kasi kung baliktad man guni, kung nagbuhat ta og chemical formula, we will do the criss-cross. Pero kung magbuhat ta og pangalan, i-reverse nato ang cross, meaning ibalik nato siya as charges. So ang subscript din hinga 3, supposedly gikan gid na siya diri sa taas. Mo nang gibalik nato siya diri, positive 3 siya. And then kani may 1 na siya diri, wala lang na siya ginasulat ang 1, pero matik na siya nga 1. So diri na siya sa negative 1 sa nitrite. Now karon ang pagpilian lang man nato whether iron 2 or iron 3 siya. So as you can see, ang charge man niya kay positive 3 mo na pagsulat nato iron 3 nitrite. That's how you name this. Okay? Questions? Questions? Walay? So, kinsa pa? Ito pa kayo mga...
Nan, ma'am.
Sige, Kathleen?
Yes po.
Ang uban kay ugma pa na ko tawagon ha. Ang uban nga wala na dili maka-recite karon. Sige, Kathleen, let's have Kajot. Nag-iisip ko. Okay, how about this? Kathleen.
Copper sulfate, ma'am.
Copper, tapos sulfate. Is this the final answer?
Hindi po, ma'am.
Ano, dili man ni mao ang final answer. What is missing here?
Kapag 2 po, ma'am.
Ang 2 missing. Ano, asa dapat ibutangan 2? Paghumansa? Yes,
Copper, ma'am.
Copper.
Sulfate.
Sige. So, ayaw jud mo kalimot ha og tan-aw whether the metal is ano siya divalent, meaning pwede duha ka buok ang iyahang charge. So di ba si copper pwede siya positive 1 or positive 2. So this is actually correct. Copper sulfate kulang lang. So pangitaon nato ang kulang. How do we know kung positive 1 siya or positive 2? Kung tanawan nato class, we don't have a subscript for both components. This is 1 here, copper 1. And then ang sulfate, kaya wala man nato siya gisulod sa open and close parenthesis. This is still 1 here. Isa ka molecule ni copper, isa ka molecule ni sulfate. So dili ta class maka-reverse criss-cross. So mag-rely ta karon sa charges nila. So si sulfate, if you look at your list there, ang charge ni sulfate diba kay negative 2. So kung wala ta nag-criss-cross class mo nang wala tay makita nga subscript din ha except sa 4 which is automatically subscript yun na siya basta maingon kag sulfate. So this is equal to 0. Kaya wala may na-criss-cross nga nahitabo mo nang dili pud ta maka-reverse criss-cross. So kung negative 2C sulfate, it means positive 2C copper para mag-equal sila kay 0. And that means the correct answer here is copper 2 sulfate. Okay? Mao na siya ang iyahang systematic name. Pero kung pangutanon ta mo, what is the common name of copper 2 sulfate? Say answeran ni.
Ferrosulfate po.
Ansa?
Ferrosulfate. Ay, copper sulfate po.
Okay, very good. This is the systematic name ha, systematic name. Pero pag ang akong pangutana, what is the common name? Pag common name gani, mao na tong nag-end sa OUS ug sa IC. So kay copper 2, is this the higher or the lower charge?
Higher
Higher charge. So unsa dapat ang ending pag higher charge?
IC po.
Jamal IC dapat to mag-end. So dapat unsa pangalan niya? Cupric sulfate. Okay. So mao ni siya class, systematic name is copper 2 sulfate pero pag common name, higher charge man ni so mag-end siya sa IC, cupric sulfate. Again, this one is the common name. Okay? So this dira sa ta mag-end, tomorrow mag-continue ta. Dili ta mulungan kung dili mo kasabot ani para pag mag higher chem na mo class sa inyong medtech na mga subjects na higher chem, dili mo malisdan when it comes to the naming of our chemicals. Pero dira sa ta magundang kay almost 1:30 naman. Mag-continue ta tomorrow. Please study. Because I might or I might not give a